Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, September 17th, 2020. I'm Matt Leck on a Matt, Jamie, and Matt Binder Thursday on the 5-time award-winning Majority Report, broadcasting closer than ever to the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, a throwback Michael interview with Zero Books editor Doug Lain that came out shortly after that New York Times profile on the IDW. And this episode is called What Intellectual Dark Web? Came out on May 10th. Also on the program today, Pentagon Papers leaker Daniel Ellsberg warns against extraditing Julian Assange at an extradition hearing in London. Enough sounds saying that Assange cannot get a fair trial for what he has done under these charges in the United States. Representative Jayapal leads a demand for investigation into mass forced hysterectomies at a for-profit immigration detention center in Ocilla, Georgia, saying it has become clear that the initial reports are likely part of a horrific pattern of conduct. Another 860,000 Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. Also, the so-called incredible jobs recovery the GOP was telling us about is over. Donald Trump says if you take the blue states out of the equation, the United States would be far more competitive with other countries. Trump also claimed CDC Director Robert Redfield was confused when he told lawmakers Wednesday he doesn't expect a potential COVID-19 vaccine to be available for most Americans until the middle of next year, and that masks are important. Relatedly, international charity Oxfam claims that more than half of future doses of coronavirus vaccines have already been snatched up by the wealthy countries, representing just 13% of the world's population. Finally, Attorney General William Barr argued yesterday that coronavirus-related lockdown orders were surpassed only by slavery as the greatest intrusion on civil liberties in this nation's history. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Folks, you heard right. There's no Brendan, so it's just me. I have full reign of the Majority Report right now, and I'm not going to abuse that. We're going to go right to the Michael interview. This is with Doug Lain. It came out right, if memory serves, right after that interview that was really, helpful, I think, for people like me who distrust and think the IDW is bad, has a bad influence on people. Barry Weiss did a helpful thing of combining a lot of them together and I think clarifying some of the things that, there's ideological diversity and there's, some ideas that don't quite make it to the dark web. But we're going to get right to this. This is a really good interview with Michael with Doug Lain. Came out before his book came out, Against the Web, way before. But a lot of the ideas, this is Michael had a lot of this stuff down pretty early on. So we'll get right to that. And then when we come back, we'll be with Jamie and Matt Binder.
And joining us now is Douglas Lain. He's the author of Bash Bash Revolution. He's a publisher at Zero Books and host of the Zero Books podcast, which you can find both on iTunes and also a lot of very good video content on YouTube. Doug, thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So, Doug, you are the perfect person to talk to about this because just as I was saying in the intro, I've been spending a lot of time on this show and my show talking about the fallout of the Iran deal, the implications for Syria, for Yemen, for a broader, crisis in the Middle East, and even really the future of the foundations of arms control. But it's very easy to get lost in sort of trivial ideas and issues like that in the face of the really, really important stuff, which is that there are a group of sort of mid-rank pundits who some college students don't like. So, clearly there's obviously much bigger things going on. And that takes us to this, sort of unintentionally comical piece that Barry Weiss came out with a couple of days ago called, it was something like Meet the Renegades of the Dark Web. And it's, an introduction to a cast of characters: Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin, Sam Harris, and I think Michael Shermer and Joe Rogan, and basically a group of guys who are sort of constantly protesting that they're, underexposed and underrepresented, even as they you just can't avoid them, from the New York Times to Bill Maher to endless YouTube and Twitter algorithms. I've never seen such ubiquitous silenced people in my life. And that actually, you put out a very insightful video recently on this sort of the kind of free speech hustle aspect of this, and these sort of people building brands on, equating being criticized with being silenced, and then using a discourse of freedom of speech, which has nothing to do with what's actually taking place, thereby polluting the term in the process.
Right. I mean, I got a little bit of pushback for that particular video because there are a few people who I showed pictures of in video who I guess have actually been either fined or in some way or another sanctioned by the state for things they've said. And I just want to make it clear, like, I am against state censorship, and the left in general is against state censorship. But what happens is that they transform issues that are difficult into issues around free speech. In other words, when you wade in on a question that's difficult and fraught with emotion, you're going to get a reaction. And they turn that reaction into a reason to claim to be martyrs, and a reason to claim to be suppressed. And they've done a good job. I mean, when he was still around, Milo did a really good job of getting the kind of reaction that looked foolish on YouTube,
right,
in order to kind of launch his career. They're smart enough to know about the Streisand effect, or to use it when it happens.
What's the Streisand effect?
Well, Barbara Streisand sued a photographer for having taken photos of her house. He was actually a landscape photographer. I think he was doing a survey of the coast, and she had, her mansion was part of the one of the places that got photographed was included her property, and she found out about these photographs existing on a website, I think, and sued the photographer for invasion of privacy. And what happened was a website that had something like 3 views and, was really not significant became very popular, and it got millions of views because of the lawsuit. So by trying to suppress this guy's photography, she ended up drawing attention to the photographs of her house that she was trying to obscure. And that's the Streisand effect.
Right. So let's pick this apart. We'll sort of take it from micro to macro here. So yes, there is the element, and you published Angela Nagel's book, Kill All Normies, a very good book that kind of captured some of the dynamic of how these people were able to leverage a certain type of, for lack of a better word, call out culture and leverage reactions that just looked bad from a brand perspective to sort of advance themselves and make their critics look foolish at times. That's kind of it's an important conversation, but it's kind of an older conversation. It's also become its own cliche. So maybe like a couple, it was important, I think, for those of us on the left to say, and I still do, just performatively, like, you want to go embarrass Ben Shapiro. Well, do it right. Don't have a meltdown. And, that's what he's looking for. But I think that message has kind of registered. And so now we're actually much more clearly confronted with, in most cases, and barring like state fines and so on, which I agree with you on. But in most cases, just this sort of bare cynicism of the move that these people make. And one of the examples of it in a specific way that we were just talking about in the office during prep was, as an example, someone like Sam Harris will say, calling somebody as a racist is a thought stopper. It's a conversation ender, because it's, particularly in his case, he's someone he's one of the ones on the side of the conversation that's very fixated and very, I don't know if it's just egoically and emotionally aggrieved or actually he's concerned about his brand's position, but he's very, very freaked out that he would get painted with a brush of bigotry, even as he dips into, everything from, retrograde foreign policy and sort of totalizing statements about Muslims to, pushing, IQ and genetics, racial stuff, right? So, but yet being called out on that, freaks him out, even though obviously he's entirely in traditions of bigotry on those grounds. But the point that we were making was that, in a very different way. So like we were Bernie bros, and Bernie bros, actually, we got accused of sexism and racism and these sort of things in, sloppy and dishonest and ridiculous and disingenuous ways all the time. And it wasn't a thought stopper because in this case or conversations, we were able to say, well, actually, no, that's inaccurate, and explain why. And what I wonder, and that's where it starts to seem like the move is actually ironically just to block any exchange. Like Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, these guys can go out and say whatever they want, but then we can say what we want. And then their response is either you're suppressing me by responding to what I said, or, you haven't followed all of the little trinkets and caveats I've put in to try to get an out for myself. And ironically, it becomes a game of hide the ball.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. Sam Harris, he at least tries to have debates occasionally. Although I would say that he is as much of a thought stopper as anything he complains about.
Right.
Because just for exactly the reasons you say, he gets hung up on basically issues of how he's being represented rather than what he's supposed to be talking about.
Right.
The big thing is, though, that most of these guys who are worried about free speech or claiming to care about free speech aren't at all consistent themselves. I mean, for instance, Jordan Peterson wanted to create a watch list of university programs and professors that he thought were neo-Marxists and needed to be defunded. That's hardly the move of someone who cares a great deal about open and honest and intellectually rigorous debate. That's just the use of force, to try to shut down the ideas you don't like. The same thing is true of Tucker Carlson and his support for some legislation that was going to penalize students for political protest on college campuses. So these guys aren't consistent about their actual free speech position. And then the other thing is I think it's important to point out, and this is something that really bothers me, actually, is that they've all embraced, all these people on the intellectual dark web, these guys that are branding themselves together in the New York Times, they've all embraced red baiting as their primary point of common interest. So, like Brett Weinstein, he's not the same as Ben Shapiro, right? Politically, they're not really aligned, except that they both are really concerned about the impact of what Brett Weinstein calls a critical theory, and Ben Shapiro would call it, I guess, Marxists or cultural Marxists, or I'm not sure. It depends, and maybe just hysterical social justice warriors. But the point is that they have their own story about what's the problem in our society, and it always comes down to their political opponents and villainizing their political opponents as part of a kind of a Jewish conspiracy, ultimately, although they, couch it in different terms to hide the origin of the idea. So I find that really disturbing, that this sort of John Birch Society idea has become mainstream enough that a bunch of people who at least dip their toe in it are being, hailed as renegade intellectuals in the New York Times.
And also the other kind of striking thing, just on a sort of basic elemental vigor level, like, let's sort of take it across the board. I mean, in some ways, like, Harris is sort of the most easy and the most glaring, in the sense that, and actually Ezra Klein did a good job of pointing out how his own constant sense of persecution and aggrievement, and his, emotional identification with other overexposed white, sort of idea peddlers who want to, promote racist ideas, as an example, without being, called as such, that is a form of identity politics. And why is it that he, as an example, could, entertain a Charles Murray, but then say that, a conversation with Ta-Nehisi Coates would just be hopeless and, not fruitful. I mean, just the sort of inability to basically disaggregate there is obvious. But the broader thing that's fascinating is that how have they been able... They've generated a narrative that not only has its roots in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, whether they know it or not, but also the fact that they, we spend a lot of time inside the left disaggregating between, what is the driver? Is it cultural? Is it economic? Is it a fusion? Universal programs, and how do they intersect with dealing with problems that persist in representation? What is our position on even things like Indeed, like the call out culture or whatever? So they're basically taking these viewpoints that are radically different, whether it be a sort of, basic kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, SJW stance or a Marxist stance. And it seems to me that they're conflating it in ways that are both not totally non-distinguishing and non-rigorous to an embarrassing degree for people who profess to be intellectuals, which I'd like you to elaborate on, but also in a way where it seems that the commonality that it just sort of comes down to is that anybody, from the least to the most sophisticated, from the most polished and the most, intellectually rigorous to the most, emotional and reactive, but that basically anybody whose position in public life is that injustice is not a good thing and we should do better for humans, that they are the problem, and we could just sort of pocket that all as Marxism or whatever.
Yeah, anyone who's dissatisfied with the status quo, that's not exactly fair that all of them think this way, but certainly Jordan Peterson, is a fighter for the status quo, and anyone who is more concerned about fighting for social justice or changes in society than he or she is about their own personal success, say, is, suspect and fallen prey to a horrible, villainous ideology of neo-Marxism, according to Peterson. And so there, obviously, that's not even a position that you can consistently hold. And he himself doesn't consistently hold with the idea that you only focus on yourself rather than on social ills. I mean, he does ask his students to get involved with his own political projects, but the main thing that I think that all of these people share is this desire for there to be a route to the truth that doesn't involve them. In other words, they want to be objective in a simple, straightforward way, which means that they have to take a lot of things that are part of the status quo for granted, as if they could never be changed. I mean, that's the problem with sort of this white bread liberal scientism that out there, is that, you know, it wants to claim this sort of objectivity and not see its own subjectivity. And that's, you know, and I say it like that, it sounds very academic, but it's pretty simple. It's like, you know, for instance, if you're taking Charles Murray's word for what the science is on race and IQ, you ought to at least consider what your own political, social position is and be extremely rigorous and scrupulous about challenging what makes you feel comfortable, right? And that kind of observation, which maybe they nod along to if said that way, is something that they really, on a fundamental level, aren't capable of holding on to it and trying to use.
Well, right. I mean, the perfect example of that is that, you know, Jordan Peterson is out running around essentially saying that until you have your life entirely psychologically and emotionally in order, you shouldn't interface with any political or economic institutional question or debate. Now, of course, it's a delusional standpoint fundamentally, because, you know, systems work on and affect your emotional and psychological health. Like if, you know, your earnings, your job security, you know, all of these things have a major impact on the type of things he's talking about, because no one exists in this sort of weird, you know, no man's land. But then on the other hand, yes, the amazing contradiction to say, like, well, you know, a 19-year-old who thinks it's, you know, atrocious and disgusting that, you know, they're going into a, you know, vastly depreciated jobs market with lower earnings, or maybe doesn't feel good about their iPhone being made in brutal sweatshop conditions and mined from rare minerals in Africa that fuel civil wars and benefit the most powerful corporations in the world. That you can't say because maybe your room isn't tidy enough. But what 19-year-olds can be utilized to do is, you know, terrorize teachers that might tell them something about American history that makes them feel uncomfortable. They're certainly psychologically ready to do that. So, I mean, you know, the sort of obvious kind of comedy of those contradictions abounds. But, and we'll get to your collision with Peterson in a second. But what I'm really interested in is, how is it that these people who are just, as you say, they're mostly status quo reinforcers, and they might in certain contexts be provocative in both good and bad, in the sense that, yes, there's a grain of truth that there is in certain very limited circles, maybe there's a quote unquote PC culture, which is, you know, uptight about comedy or something, right? And they can sort of zero in on that and hammer that all day, and, you know, use the same handful of examples and grossly overinflate their importance. Okay. And then on the other hand, they're also actually taking aim at really good and really positive, hard-earned aspects of quote unquote PC culture. Like, it is a good, hard-earned and small social advances that, like, yes, in certain circles, you know, sexually harassing your secretary or whatever, you know, or even the fact that, like, people are stratified in those job roles along gender, that we've slowly, slightly progressed. That's a good thing. Or that we don't, you know, sort of openly promote racial hierarchies, and that's considered to be, like, not appropriate. These are actually, you know, barely the beginning of vital social advances that any decent society would hope to accomplish. So there's that. But and then on the other hand, especially with regards to things like their relations to capitalism, to markets, to, you know, using sort of scientific anecdotes dumbed down and highly mediated for public consumption to justify income inequality and say that capitalism is somehow this natural, organic state we're in versus a decided economy. This is all reinforcement of status quo. So how are they able to do this incredible, and people point out the hilarious sort of paradox of people who constantly have exposure, constantly whining about their lack of exposure, but they're resonating with something like that hustle, that ludicrous thing is working in their branding.
Yeah. Last night I was watching, because I'm middle-aged now. I was looking at Mort Saul from 1992 interview Roger Ailes.
Oh, wow.
And it was remarkable how similar they sounded to some of these dark web pundits today in their criticism of kind of liberal establishment types, and but back then, I mean, Mort Saul sort of lost some of his lefty luster over time because he embraced aspects of the right, and no one was thinking that these two guys represented some hot new trend online, or of course online barely existed,
right?
And no one was elevating them to be the new part of the new counterculture, right? So why is it that these same kind of attitudes and ideas are coming across as more controversial and more interesting than they really are now? I think it has to do, my theory is, and it's just a theory, I think it has to do with the fact that Occupy Wall Street didn't succeed, that we had economic crisis and a political crisis after that, and the left's response to it was partial, and we ended up kind of retreating into a circular firing squad and a lot of scapegoating here and there and a call-out culture of our own. And because of that, now we're at a point where just trying to return to normal sounds really hip and cool. We've lived through this sort of failed attempt at change that was not brought on because people organized for it, but brought on by economic and crisis, political crisis and then economic crisis. And I think the way to beat these guys is to think more deeply and organize something like Occupy that does the job better, that gets further.
That's really interesting because it's almost like a trope in our discourse about the 60s generation and the strides that were made, but also the backlash, Nixon and Reagan and and the generation of 68 either failed and got marginalized, or they made their peace and in various different ways either moved fully, became reactionaries, or just sort of moved in a kind of neoliberal direction. Like you look at Joschka Fischer as an example in Germany, going from literally street brawling and beating up cops to being the green foreign minister that implements EU integration and bombing Kosovo, and now is a global green consultant for BMW and other global brands. But that's interesting that maybe even for us, even people don't register Occupy in the same way as a moment that really was wow, maybe we can actually do this. And then it failed for a variety of reasons, and that's still actually hitting us.
Yeah, I mean, we had the Arab Spring and Occupy together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Occupy was inspired by the Arab Spring and
Indignados,
came after 2008 which was the economic crisis, was still fresh in everyone's minds. We thought the global capitalism itself was going to fall out from under our feet, or some of us did. And a lot of, kids then really were looking at very bleak futures, and they didn't blame, blue-haired gender studies majors for it. They blamed the banks.
Right.
And but then we weren't organized. We have, there's some real serious difficulties in overcoming the system that we're in that no one was prepared to fully address, or including me, including anybody on the left. And so I think part of this is just a consequence of the way we haven't been able to quite accomplish a transformation. But that's sort of a knee-jerk revolutionary's answer. Well, the problem is we haven't had that revolution yet, and that's always the problem.
It is always the problem.
I do think it comes out of 2011. I really do. I do think that we kind of moved into a identity politics and call-out culture on the left, and then on the right there was a great move to make hay out of that, and that we saw the way that we were co-opted. That movement was co-opted, come around and bite us and empower the right.
What is you have a specific experience, and I believe you're actually on your way to potentially try to have this conversation that's been blown off, but you've had very revealing interaction with the histrionic fascist shaman, Kermit the Frog voiced Jordan Peterson. What is that?
Well, okay, I have to say it's been entirely one-sided. In other words, I emailed him and then his team, his publicist, to try to get him onto the Zero Books podcast. Right. And when I did that, I actually got a lot of heat from people on the left saying, "Why are you bothering talking to this guy?" Now I don't think anyone would say it that way.
Right.
But anyway, his team canceled on me at the beginning of this year.
They initially, just to be clear, initially they said they would do it, and Jordan Peterson has done a lot of he sits in the Rogan studio and does a lot of well, I'm ready if they could defend their ideas. And you came along and you said, "Hey, I'm a dirty, communist who wants to end capitalism and thinks that racism exists, and I'm ready to take you on, buddy." And so there you go. Right.
Yeah, and so he was willing to. His team thought it would be fine to go on my show. I mentioned Kill All Normies, which they might have heard of, and so they were going to have him on, and then to promote his book. But then it turned out, he didn't really need to come on my podcast or such small fry podcast. And I don't know if they caught wind of who I was and got cold feet or what exactly happened, but they canceled the promise to reschedule. Then Peterson went on Joe Rogan, and Rogan asked him, "Hey, do any of these Marxists that you hate so much ever debate you? Have you ever actually talked to any of these guys?" And his answer was no, they don't want to debate me. They don't ever ask me to. They don't want to talk to me. Right. They're basically, the implication was that they're afraid to really expose their ideas to the light of day.
Right.
But in fact, at that very moment, I was trying to get him to come on my podcast to talk to me. So it was a violation of what is listed as Rule 8 in his book, The 12 Rules for Life, which is never lie.
Oh, so basically you found, maybe not necessarily a mess, but some scattered papers in his room.
Oh, I sure did. Yes. And I would say, I guess I should, I've been told I should keep this under wraps just in case.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to see him. He's in Seattle today on his tour, and I plan on trying to ask him about this.
Trying to have a free and open exchange of ideas, which I normally oppose, but in this case I support.
Right. Right.
Well, I want to get to Bash Bash Revolution a bit, which is such an amazing book because it actually got me to read a sci-fi book, which is a mind-blowing accomplishment. But what is the part? I was actually talking with a friend of mine about this the other day, and he's more in that kind of tech world, and there's a lot of resonance in this stuff, and I think that this is almost like it's better to think of this stuff as this isn't a real intellectual movement. It's a lifestyle brand for a particular type of I think a particular kind of brand identity, and obviously, like in Jordan Peterson's case, self-help. But there's a part that just feels so like I did the opening segment on the show on this the massive fallout of this it can't be underscored enough, the just utter disaster of the Iran pullout. Of course, all of the usual biggies that at this point we just sort of note in a numbed way, but really are, the systemic crisis of climate, of global warming. Ben Carson wants to take an axe to public, housing in a way that will, obviously viciously harm so many people. Net neutrality, ironically, in the context of all of this internet-enabled stuff, that's Ed Markey has a bill in the Senate right now to try to protect it from the Republican FCC's decision. So everything from macro to micro, we just have so many actual real things to deal with, other than these sort of like peddlers of mediocre ideas and empowerment of sort of reactionary politics. There's a part, and I'm going to get a little Alex Jones here, but it just feels like this is all, it's all coded. They're flooding the zone with nonsense so that, like, instead of having a half an hour conversation where Doug Lain and I actually talk about real things that need to be addressed, we're talking about these morons. But they're getting New York Times profiles, and they're taking an unbelievable amount of oxygen with ideas that it's like. And I think there's another thing that their followers and the kind of cults don't understand. The ideas have been addressed. The bell curve has been critiqued. Horrible foreign policy ideas have been critiqued. Scientism and positivism have been critiqued for centuries. And even the other stuff, it's like, yeah, great. Clean your room. Eat a high protein breakfast. Take a run. I'm a big fan. Believe it or not, my apartment is very tidy. Great.
I believe it.
Yeah. So
not so much my house, but I believe it.
Bucko. But so where's the part? I don't know. I don't even know how to phrase this as a question, but it just seems so like this is like almost it's a very sad and not fun. There's no like it's not a party. It's not like great pop culture, but it's basically just like a bread and circus show that's distracting us from real shit we got to get on top of, but at the same time also opening a door to even more damaging things. I don't know. It's very frustrating. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does. Okay, so I want to say one thing, and I'm just using this as a way to plug, but while it's true that the New York Times ran a piece on the intellectual dark web and gave them a boost, they also ran a few days earlier a birthday greeting to Karl Marx that one of our authors at Zero Books wrote, the author of Marx Returns, Jason Barker, and it made Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and Glenn Beck and James Wood tweet like crazy at the New York Times about how dare they try to bring this outmoded, backwards, mass murdering ideologist to the New York Times.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think the idea that the capitalist media will just put anything out there if it might get some clicks is maybe true. The other thing is
The Economist just ran a piece on how like it was something to the effect, and of course they did their usual bob and weave, but the broad point was that Marx is surprisingly relevant to understanding today's capitalism. So even in The Economist.
Right. No.
Yep.
Yeah. And no, I think that people should really read, like, forget about Bash Revolution. No, don't. But really read Capital Volume 1. But the point that you're making is there a conspiracy of? I mean, you're not really asking.
Not consciously, but just that dynamic when it's like it couldn't be more urgent to deal with real things than ever, and yet like this just sort of peak middle brow bullshit is so front and center to the agenda that actually if we did ignore it, it would be like the same way that I basically tried to ignore like Gamergate several years ago. Like, whatever, I don't want to talk about this shit. There's things going on in Yemen. And now, now those guys like run the Republican Party.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think what it is that when you are up against a really difficult problem, people who sound confident and say things that you already think are going to be appealing. And they get to say the big plus for them is they get to say things that some people already think but are afraid to say, like,
right.
Maybe black people have low IQs or something like that.
Right.
And so that's why they're appealing in a way. And I really think what it is answers, even wrong answers, are better than just questions that leave you anxious, that you don't have an answer to.
Right.
That's how people are kind of constitutionally. They want closure all the time, and these people offer a kind of closure and a way to identify. I mean,
yep.
It's fun to think that you're as cool as Ben Shapiro, I guess.
That's a whole other very disturbing thing to me. Like, when did that become cool? Jesus.
I know. Well, maybe we're overestimating this.
Right.
The New York Times is not really setting the agenda for the youth of today.
That is totally true. But I mean, some of these guys are definitely, if it wasn't reflected back in a lot of online interactions and even just sort of questions that I got, I wouldn't take it nearly as seriously. And so, I know, as an example, I know that Alex Jones, it's important to keep an eye on him, and it's incredibly entertaining. And actually, unlike all these other people, he's actually a genuine broadcast talent. Alex Jones leaves, Dave Rubin. The only one of the guys in the whole article who has any sort of just basic talent is Rogan. Everybody else, oh my God. But I know that Alex Jones, I know that there's nobody who's watching me and then also going to say hey, Michael, I'm a fan of both yours and Alex, and I know you don't see eye to eye, but I'd really like your thoughts on Brain Force or whatever. Right. But
on gay frogs.
Yeah. On gay frogs or exactly. Or the conspiracy, Obama wants kids to sleep with, to have sex with cars or something, right? That's not going to happen. But these guys, they pop up, and frankly, I honestly find it, I don't think any of it's particularly more intellectually enriching or rigorous or relevant than particularly anything that's coming out of Alex Jones's mouth, to be honest. I get it's not as absurd, but it's certainly not. But at any rate, how does this interface with Bash Bash Revolution, your new novel?
Well, okay, so I guess the only thing that I would say interfaces with this is that my novel, along with other things, is a critique of what I'll call instrumental reason.
Yeah.
The main character's dad is one of these kind of techno-utopian scientistic thinkers who kind of conceives of life as being a race between human intelligence and human stupidity, and who just fails to notice how the human stupidity and intelligence are always intertwined.
Right.
So his goal, Trump is elected in the book, and there's a threat of a nuclear confrontation, nuclear war, and his goal is to get the AI to help him save humanity, basically. And his way of doing it is to perfect everyone, to through scientific means and AI enhancement, make everyone the best version of themselves that they can be. But what he discovers is that only escalates conflict, that only escalates the crisis. When people are smarter and faster and more intelligent and healthier, they just do the same things more efficiently. And so something has to change on a different level, not on the level of perfecting biology or retooling what is, but to create something new. And that's kind of a major point and theme in the book, is that the AI enhancement just isn't really working. And every time he gets better at juggling, we don't get any closer to escaping our doom, or to utopia.
Right,
the same thing.
And of course, that's obviously, that's definitely the sort of Sam Harris scientism angle. Peterson has a scientism, but he's also trying to reinforce a kind of very reactionary mysticism. That actually leads me to the last question. We've talked about this. One of the things that's so bizarre specifically about Peterson is that he has Shapiro is basically just a far right, typical far right conservative who thinks Trump's a little uncouth and, is totally racist towards Arabs and has the same just kind of, deregulate social reactionary policies, blah, blah, blah. And then, Dave Rubin's just kind of an airhead who nods along. And Sam Harris is a scientist, of scientism, and it's sort of bad foreign policy with positivism and a trust fund and zero self-introspection. Peterson is very weird because it's a fusion of, he's very, very socially reactionary, but he's also trying to make a case for naturalizing capitalism, which in both, capitalism in both very good ways from a perspective of social progress and also in very negative ways, is never going to allow in the long term for the types of, social stratification and, traditional gender norms that he pines for. So he really has a contradictory viewpoint, and, that maybe that's for the next novel.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that Peterson, the way he's self-contradictory is interesting. And that's actually probably one of the reasons he's so appealing, is because he does offer people some things to think about that aren't just, clearly talking points for some part of the Republican Party.
Right.
Joseph Campbell was a very big pop phenomena and was of interest to lots of people. And his lectures are still probably being watched by a certain subculture today. And all of that power of myth and what is human nature and what is the human imagination made of? Is there, are there categories that are universal to the human imagination? Can we see them across cultures? All of that is interesting. I am not aligned with Jung at all, and I think Joseph Campbell's work is, but I still think it's interesting, right?
Right.
So that is one of the things that Peterson has going for him. The problem is that he wants to ground our identity and basically our ancestry, evolutionary ancestry, but also, I think, cultural. And that could very well bleed into our racial ancestry as well. I mean, there's aspects of Jungian thought that can align with really reactionary, fascist, racialist thinking.
Yes.
And so that's the fact that he's interesting is actually one of the things that makes him sort of more dangerous.
I will slap you happily.
He likes, he's a monster.
Yes.
Right? That's what one of his big talking points is: be a monster, but, hold it in check.
Jesus Christ. It's so nice that all of these incredibly emotionally healthy people are exerting such a big influence on culture. Maybe it's like Sam Harris needs therapy, Jordan Peterson needed to do less therapy, and I don't know, Ben Shapiro needed to lose his virginity at an appropriate age. I don't know, and Dave Rubin was just hopeless. I don't know. Hopefully,
let's not go there. Let's not go into the virginity thing. Oh my God.
Okay. Fair enough. Oh, well, I'm talking very specific. Something needed to happen for Ben Shapiro. I don't know what. But my God, not even a hand job on Birthright. Okay. Douglas Lain, he's the author of Bash Bash Revolution. He is the publisher of Zero Books and host of the Zero Books podcast. Very, very good podcast and YouTube content and everything else. Douglas, appreciate your time as always.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, Matt.
What's up? You hear me?
I do hear you loud and clear.
Great to be here today on this wonderful September 17th, 2020.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed the date there.
I did, yeah.
I just wanted to point out, or not point out, but draw attention That last line about Ben Shapiro not even getting a hand job on Birthright that's the sort of Michael pizzazz that only he could really bring.
Right. The delivery is about half of it, and only Michael could deliver it with just that natural flow of a conversation. There's
exactly.
See, if it was me, I would have ruined the joke, because I would have been like, in my head, I'd be like, here we go, I'm gonna do it, and then I would just mess up with the delivery completely.
Exactly. I think Jamie joining us now. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, guys.
How's it going?
You know what? I'm a little bit sick, and I took cold medicine at night, too late at night, and then I kind of overslept, so I don't feel great. But you know what? I am going to get through this with the help of the mats, and it's going to be great.
Well, hopefully you're good enough to do plugs. That's the concern right now.
Always.
I think.
Jamie's being modest. She actually told us off air that she's been up all night. She pulled an all-nighter prepping for the show today. She has a list of all the stories. She's delivered about 24 clips for us to pull, and we're going to try our best to hit everything Jamie's prepared.
Yeah,
I wish. I do have some stuff, but yeah.
Before we get to the fun half stuff, should we talk about? I want to just play this clip of Daniel Ellsberg on Democracy Now! At the extradition hearing for Julian Assange, because I think this is important. And we can preface all the stuff about Assange, like you don't have to agree with his politics. I don't. You don't even have to trust his politics. I don't trust his politics either. The fact of the matter is, the context of this case is something where it's like the imperial powers trying to condition our media environment and the playing field with who's a journalist and who's not a journalist. That's the important factor here. It's not your feelings about Assange. So here's Ellsberg on, where's my Zoom at? Ellsberg on Democracy Now! Earlier today.
The American press has remained in kind of a state of denial for 40 years, really, since my case, that the Espionage Act has wording in it that could be aimed directly at them, at the journalists and publishers, although until this case, it hasn't done so. So now the American press is staring right down the barrel at the use of the Espionage Act against American journalists and publishers for doing journalism, for doing what they do best at their best every day, of getting information that the government doesn't want known to the public because of their wrongdoing, their lies, their crimes, whatever. There's a lot of those. And that's what is mainly the secrecy system is intended to protect indefinitely. Now, it's not only American journalists here, although the American First Amendment, the core of our form of government, I would say, is at stake at this right now and is being attacked. Actually, if Julian is extradited, as I say, as you said, it will lead to prosecution here and probably conviction, and he will be the first journalist and publisher, but not the last. New York Times probably won't be the second either. It might be the third or the fourth, and you, Amy, as well. So everybody has a stake in this. Meanwhile, if Julian is extradited to the United States to face these charges for doing the journalism that he has, the charges that are made against him, no journalist in the world is safe from life imprisonment in the United States of America. So the stakes here are enormous. And for freedom of the press anywhere, ours is far from perfect. Other places have less, a few have more. But the possibility of freedom of the press and thus of democracy is at stake all over the world in this. That sounds almost certainly like hyperbole, and it isn't.
So yeah, Ellsberg there, I think, with a mic drop.
Right. It's an important case. And, like you said, it doesn't matter what your feelings are on Assange either. And I just want to add also that regardless of what he said in a personal capacity that you disagree with, he's definitely been very partisan in terms of his own personal opinions out there on his Twitter feed when he was tweeting and all that. But the actual WikiLeaks releases have all been legitimate. They've all been real things that were sent to WikiLeaks and then released in a journalistic manner. I mean, it's just, that's just the facts of this case. I mean,
yeah.
Also, I just want to say that anyone who has a bookcase behind them for their like Zoom webcamming, they need to step it up, because Daniel Ellsberg has the most insane bookshelving, bookcase, whatever I've ever seen behind him. Just a mass number of books.
Yeah.
His Zoom background. Just everyone's got to step it up.
I do agree. Like, I think I referenced briefly, and I don't want to dwell too much on about it, because what I said, that is not the important thing about Assange, to like litigate his failures. Like, I think I said yesterday, like, who has this view from nowhere, or not view from nowhere, but the Democrats, Republicans are equal view in politics, who has changed the world? And the answer really is Julian Assange. And it's been unhelpful, I think. Like, I read this In Defense of Assange by Tariq Ali, and there's an early essay in it. It's a collection of essays. I think Tariq Ali is the editor. I might be wrong about that. But the early essay is like, regardless of what you think about Assange, being dumb about the election, that's not the important point, right? Like, just because he might be able to downplay the difference between the GOP and the Democrats, that's what pissed a lot of people off. And that essay had to spend a lot of time defending him from that. And also, and I think it did a good job and, stressed the things we also stressed. There's also the 2009 ClimateGate thing, which is entirely de-emphasized, I think, for good reason, because it was, I think that when you do have this sort of view from nowhere and aren't an overtly ideological leaking organization, you'll publish like ClimateGate emails. And I think that was a thing that I wouldn't have done if I was a leak organization. But with all that stuff aside, like, what's happening here, and the reason it's happening for, is to attack the First Amendment and make it easier to keep things under covers, keep secrets under wraps. That end of story. Nothing else matters.
Right. Absolutely. And also the way they're trying to get him too. The roundabout way they're trying to get Assange on this is also stunning, to be quite frank, because I mean, they'll I believe yesterday one of the things brought up to defend Assange was the amount of years that the U.S. is looking to put him in jail. And the U.S. in response was just like, no, we're not going to look for anything more than 10 years, promise. I mean, 10 years is still a lot, but also, can you believe them? I believe they're actually, the belief from any sensible point of view is they're looking for 100+ years. Certainly
175,
enough,
I think.
Whatever the number is, the number would be the equivalent to life for someone of Assange's age.
Exactly.
And like, okay, I do think it matters what the content of his reporting was. If somebody is spreading a bunch of, I don't know, like doxing anti-fascist organizers under the cover of freedom of speech, I'm probably going to think that person is an asshole, although there's definitely no chance that the U.S. government would be going after him the way that he is. But he has spoken truth to those in power, and most of what he published was damning stuff about the Iraq War, which people really like to gloss over when they talk about what a douchebag he is or whatever. Like, I would hope that a video of American military guys gunning down civilians like they're in a video game, it carries a little more weight than him being a douchebag.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I forget what the original that disclosure's name was, but yeah, WikiLeaks has done a lot of great work for journalism. A lot of journalism had made won awards based off of things that they've leaked. Absolutely, and that does need to be stressed more than my quibbles about the ClimateGate thing, right? Like, absolutely.
Oh, and he went after the DNC. Too bad, they're evil too. I don't care. That's good that he did that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the context, I agreed with like Splinter's choice to publish stories based on those articles. I think that you do need to be contextualized in the context of like. I think it's always good to stress that it's better to not have the GOP in power, but nonetheless, as far as like,
we also need a glossary. Cheese means boys, sauce means girls.
Also, the government's not really going after him because of the DNC leaks. They're going after him because of the leaks that Chelsea Manning provided them with. That's the leaks that's caused this whole thing. That's why the Obama administration wanted Assange, and that's why the Trump administration wants him. I mean, that's the facts.
Yeah.
If you thought what Chelsea Manning found and made public isn't the problem, if you think that's good, then you have to understand WikiLeaks' role in that.
Yeah. I would say the reason a lot of liberals don't like him, though, is because of the DNC stuff.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I again, like, I think for a lot of people, I understand that, right? Like,
right. I totally get it. But you have to separate the two.
Let me just say, I don't think that he threw the election. I always will stress the Obamacare premiums and that stuff, right? But I understand people's perception of, like, yeah, not super helpful. Like, and where the F were the GOP emails, right? Like, I understand people that have perceptions and attitudes based on Trump winning. I think if Trump would have lost, like, Assange would have, I mean, I don't believe Hillary would have pardoned him at all. I think, like, he'd be still up. It had been psychologically tortured this entire time. But like for him, like, yeah, it's probably no difference. But like for most Americans, I understand why that state of affairs poisoned their attitudes against him. And I think it's a shame, really, because this is too important to be caught up in, wanting Hillary to have been president.
Right. Which makes the whole situation really perfect for the Trump administration to do this during.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be yeah.
I mean, you have the people who would be up in arms and against the Trump administration doing this, sitting back and saying it's not so bad. I mean, that's the facts. I mean, everything, you have people who literally stand up against everything Trump does, rightfully so, but have taken a seat back on this one at the very least. If they're not advocating against Assange, then they're just not engaged in it, which obviously would not have happened otherwise.
Exactly. Well, guys, I think we should probably get to the fun half. I will start with the plugs today. On TMBS this week, we had Joshua Kahn Russell of the Wildfire Project to talk about the wildfires, or the fires in the climate fires in out west. And we also have Ben Burgess on to talk about his retrospective on John Ronson's public shaming book, and how public shaming is not really something that is characteristically a left-wing phenomenon. So check that out, patreon.com/TMBS. Also tonight, I'm going to be taken to the skies in Flight Simulator 2020 or whatever it's called. I think that's the name. I played like about 40 hours of it already. So twitch.tv/literary hangover if you want to. I'll probably fly over like maybe Cape Town, South Africa. I've been reading a lot about Mandela lately, so I might do some of that. But yeah, join me, twitch.tv/literary hangover.
Cool.
I will be going live tonight at 9:30 p.m. at youtube.com/MattBinder for the latest episode of Doomed. And tonight we'll be talking to Dr. Rachel Bloom, who has a book coming out about the Tea Party. And the reason why this is so important to talk about right now is because I truly believe that regardless of what happens in November with the presidential election, we will see QAnon become the Tea Party of current day. And we'll be discussing that and the overlap and learning about the Tea Party, refreshing us about the Tea Party and finding new things about the Tea Party. So we will all be prepared to deal with the upcoming QAnon world we'll be living in. That is youtube.com/MattBinder, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight. And also subscribe to my newsletter at misinfo.com. That's misinformation for short, misinfo.com.
All right. So this week on the Antifada, Sean and I finally managed to record an episode yesterday, and we got an episode for you and a bonus for you, which I'm going to post as soon as I'm done with the Majority Report today. So Sean and I talk a little bit about what we've been reading. I'm sure you want to know about that. We talk about QAnon in Congress. Are they dangerous or just kooks? Then we talk about a story in the Philadelphia Inquirer about a town in Pennsylvania that went from solidly blue, and basically they called it communism on the prairie, to now being a very depressed, very Trump voting town and the sort of wider systemic factors driving that. We talked about ICE giving forced hysterectomies to detainees and the horrible history there of eugenics and non-consensual sterilization in this country and elsewhere. And then I believe this is bracketed off for the bonus. We discussed the settlement that the city of Louisville is paying to Breonna Taylor's family, and the question, which is possibly a very misleading question, what do we do with killer cops? Lastly, we discuss, all these big investment firms like Blackstone are investing in trailer parks right now. I wonder why. So that's out today and tomorrow. Patreon.com/theantifada.
Damn. So TMBS had a public shaming episode. Jamie has a QAnon episode. I mean, I got some content to consume. That's right up my alley.
Yeah, check it out.
All right, folks. See you on the fun half.
Fun half.
Left is best.
Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabs.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me...
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
I have to admit that that song reminded me to turn the phone calls on. I was sitting here, the first beginning of it was playing, I'm dancing in my seat, and then all of a sudden the first 646 comes up, and I'm like, oh yeah, right.
I mean, underrated about that because everybody comments on the cartoon and the audio clips, but the music is actually pretty catchy for how many times we've heard it.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
So just to reiterate though, IM's and phone call machine is on. I saw some people complain that my volume was too loud, and without Brendan here today, that might have been the case. So I've lowered it. Let me know if that's good now, and let me know if everyone else sounds good, right? I mean, they should sound good, I guess.
Mine too. People often complain that I am too loud, but maybe that's just their sexism coming out.
Now, see, I usually take it as an actual like technical critique, but maybe they were also commenting on them just not wanting to hear me, like just turn me down completely. I didn't consider that.
Yeah, well, that's male privilege for you.
Right,
I mean, the audiophiles should know that if sound quality is really the key to them enjoying this product, the podcast is mixed better because I do that in post. So Zoom doesn't give us the option to really control things here. Working on that, as Sam always says, because this frustrates him too. But yeah, like if audio is what you're after, then you shouldn't be watching us on YouTube, folks.
Yeah. What are you doing?
What a great promotion there. Folks, tune out now. Catch the other product.
Yeah. Wait for the podcast.
All right, guys. What do you want to talk about first? I feel like there's so much to discuss.
Always.
Do you want to quickly talk about, because this was happening this morning, this hearing with the FBI director from the House Homeland Security Committee, because there's some interesting things that were brought up that surely will not make President Donald Trump very happy. And this is coming from his own FBI director.
The deep state. Sure.
Is this? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, Chris Wray, FBI Director Chris Wray, was brought in to testify, to provide testimony at a House Homeland Security Committee hearing this morning. And I'm not sure if it's over yet. It was still going on when the show started. But basically, there were some interesting nuggets that came out of this hearing. He was asked about Antifa. And, this is the guy Trump picked to head the FBI. We've already seen what his other picks to head up various different agencies do for him. For example, AG Barr. But Chris Wray basically said how, Antifa is, there are some, violence that is connected to anarchist groups that self-identify as Antifa that the FBI has looked into. But overall, Antifa is not a group or an organization. Antifa is an ideology or a movement. Wow. The FBI director agreeing with basically everything that everyone but the Republicans and the right wing and Donald Trump say about Antifa. Shocking. He also came out and said that the most dangerous category of domestic terrorism is racially motivated extremism. Now, maybe our conservative friends are listening to this and going, well, of course, look what Black Lives Matter has been up to this past couple of months. No, he followed it up with telling everyone that the biggest chunk of that category are white supremacist extremists. Shocking again, I know.
Wow.
And then on top of everything, he said that Russia is again trying to undermine the election, and they are doing that by trying to hurt Joe Biden. Again, not really shocking to anyone who has been paying attention to anything and lives in reality, but maybe shocking to some people who listen to, I don't know, the President of the United States.
Wow. Countdown to this guy getting fired.
Right.
I mean,
5, 4, a very short countdown, right?
It makes sense that he would know that about Antifa because, in order to surveil and fight a movement, you have to kind of know what it is. You can't just go based on what the conspiracy theories are. But these other two are somewhat surprising coming from him.
Right.
Another bit of news that we can maybe pile on with this from yesterday is military police leaders weighed deploying heat ray against DC protesters. And apparently this was even too much for Chris. This is in 2018.
It's like some Star Wars shit.
Yeah, it's he was looking into two things. A long range acoustic device. This is
they never use those.
Yeah, and
Like,
then
we always get scared that they're going to use them. People are like spreading rumors. Oh, they're taking out the LRAD. They never use them on crowds ever. They haven't
bring
done
them
it in
out?
a while. Yeah, but they can also be used just as PA systems.
Right.
And that's what they usually like people are always freaking out like, yo, they use that shit in Afghanistan. They don't use it very much, knock on wood.
Yeah, did you just get kicked off the phones?
I have to. People are saying, sorry about that. People are saying the phone lines are not up, which wouldn't make any sense because I am called in, so they should be working.
This is this thing called active denial system, or ADS. The military developed the ADS some 20 years ago as a way to disperse crowds. There have been questions as to whether it worked and should be deployed in the first place. This sounds like something out of John Ronson's Men Who Stare at Goats, actually. It uses millimeter wave technology essentially to heat the skin of people targeted by its invisible ray. Jesus. This is an NPR.
Freaking laser beams.
Yeah, and the email went on to say the ADS can direct a beam toward a group, and that provides a sensation of intense heat on the surface of the skin. The effect is overwhelming, causing an immediate repel response by the targeted individual. And apparently, the Times reported that Christian Nielsen, the Secretary of Homeland Security, when this was brought up in 2018 to deploy against migrants, she said that she would not, and first of all, this is not to reflect positively too much on Christian Nielsen, who is very bad, but she said that she would not authorize the use of such a device, and that should never be brought up again in her presence. That part is interesting to me, about how, like, don't bring that up again to me in my presence, which is like a big, like, sort of cover your ass sort of thing. Like, I don't know. It's still popping around out there. But the one thing I wanted to say about this, actually, before we get too far off, is I think, like when you read revolutionaries, you want to encourage the military to defect, right? And I think a lot of military folks are winnable, much more so than the police, right? But this was the military police leaders doing this. And like, so when we talk about these protests getting out of control, and then we think about, well, maybe the military and the or the National Guard or whoever will be better than the local cops. It's like, well, not necessarily. They might have like some heat ray they want to use on you.
Wait, did they actually use this?
No, I don't think they were able. Let's see. They just required one, but they requested one or waited, I guess is the.
Because I'm not saying that they would never use such a weapon on protesters, but I feel like a lot of the time when they leak this information, they're just trying to scare people. And sometimes it works. Like I was just talking about, people are scared of the LRAD. It makes them less bold and less brave in their actions and, more likely to back down. And civil liberties are eroding every day in this country, but we do still have some protections. And I think it actually would be a pretty big deal for the cops to escalate past tear gas and rubber bullets and the quote unquote crowd control devices that you currently see them using.
Yeah, good point.
So, be aware, read the news, but also be brave and don't let them scare you. That's my TLDR.
That seems like something that the first time they use it, there would be a very broad and overwhelming uproar over them using something like that. That doesn't seem like something they'd get away with normalizing, at least in the current state of things. Who knows down the line, but depending how things go. And it definitely seems like they'd be shooting themselves with a heat ray in the foot by actually using a heat ray on protesters.
Yeah. And I mean, there were plenty of things that Christian Nielsen didn't say, don't bring that up in my presence, when she was at Department of Homeland Security. So I think this is probably something they aren't ready to go. If Nielsen feels that way about it, it's probably a bit too far beyond the pale for even them right now. But I mean, it was just depressing, unsurprising.
All right, the phone system is working now, by the way, everyone. There was a issue with the voicemail being not turned off, but it is now off, and you can call in. Everything's good.
You guys want to watch a Charlie Kirk freak out?
I do want to watch a Charlie Kirk freak out. You don't even have to ask. That's a given.
So this is posted by Jason S. Campbell, and let's see what's going on. We haven't checked in with Charlie Kirk in a long time. I'm not. He has gotten
his new. He's got his new studio.
Yeah.
How's his ass healing from that spanking Sam gave him?
I think it's. Well, I guess we'll find out. We'll see how.
I don't know if I want to hear or talk about Charlie Kirk's rear end, but
let's talk about his deportment and demeanor and see if it's worsened in that time period. Because I think many people are saying it has.
For those of you that say, "Well, it really doesn't impact me. I don't care if Trump goes to prison." Well, first of all, you absolutely should care, because if we lose, they're going to come after the churches. They're going to come after the organizations. They're going to come after the people. They're going to come after the social media accounts. They're going to come after the bank accounts. They're going to come after every single person that played any form and role into trying to defend President Trump. But social media banning, following in the streets, targeting in every form and fashion. If we lose, if the president loses, they will come for us all. They will come for your children. They will come for your schools. They will come in every fashion. And they won't stop. This idea that the left is all of a sudden going to embrace the Christian ethic of forgiveness and moving on is so short-sighted. You read this article, I have it on charliekirk.com. It shows in such vivid detail that they are going to do whatever it takes to try to personally and intergenerationally destroy Donald Trump. That's how much they hate him. They hate him not because of his tweets, not because of his style. They hate him because now Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are on the Supreme Court. They hate him because the embassy is now in Jerusalem. They hate him because illegal immigration is going down. They hate him because middle-class wages are going up. They hate him because China is now being held accountable. They hate him because we're out of TPP. NAFTA's been renegotiated. They hate him because all of their schemes have been put in jeopardy. All of the plans of the ruling class.
Yes, I just want to.
All of their schemes have been put in jeopardy. Okay. All of the plans of the ruling class were obliterated by a man that they don't think should even be invited to a cocktail party, let alone become president of the United States. They're going to come with bloodthirsty revenge.
Yeah. The ruling elite really hates what Trump has done with respect to, like, say, Israel and Saudi Arabia. Like, damn you.
Right? He does sound a little bit butthurt, dare I say.
He's a little bit jittery, actually. A little bit like.
Yeah.
Let's say caffeinated. Very caffeinated.
We're in the second act of Requiem for a Dream right now.
Right. Very caffeinated. Perhaps some coffee got up his nose because I noticed he was very itchy there. Yeah. I don't know what was going on with Charlie Kirk.
Takes one.
I don't know what's going on with Charlie Kirk, but I hope he gets help. Anyways, you guys got stories that
one more thing on Charlie Kirk before we move on. He did hit upon a lot of the reasons that we hate Trump, right? Like, I wish that all liberals hated Trump for such substantive reasons and not just his style or demeanor, right? Like, yes, we do hate him because he's enacting immigration restrictions and appointing reactionary judges to the Supreme Court who want to overturn Roe versus Wade. And obviously because of the Israel stuff, like, I don't know. It's one more instance of the right understanding the left a little bit better than centrist media does. And I just can't wait till the final showdown.
The final showdown.
Just get out of our way. Let us take care of him. We know what to do.
Also, let's see. I think so. The TPUSA founder, the guy who convinced Charlie Kirk to forego college and become a propagandist, died of coronavirus. And now,
hell yeah!
If you search TPUSA founder, if you search TPUSA founder. He no longer comes up. I believe his name was Bill Montgomery.
Well, does he no longer come up on Google? Because who knows what happened there?
Yeah, they basically he used to come up when you search TPUSA founder alongside Charlie Kirk. And
right. Well, the more interesting thing there is it seems like someone has edited the Turning Point USA pages. Like for Google just not to
That's
update
why,
their search.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just want people to be clear here that
good
someone has edited where Google pulls this information from, which would be the official Turning Point USA wiki entry, or even the Turning Point USA website. But apparently they took them off of there. All I see is Charlie.
Charlie. Follow Charlie. Oh, yeah.
Oh, look at that.
No Bill. No mention of Bill. Anyway, wiped from history like one of those Soviet photographs.
Also, did you notice that Kirk was what he promoted on his show? Excuse me. I felt a little bit of a companionship, camaraderie with Charlie Kirk there.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk like burp suppression.
Although I failed at it where he succeeded. Weak leftist I am. What a soy boy. But but Charlie Kirk promoted his own website during that instead of Turning Point USA. He must be going for his own thing now. He's not really pushing TP USA anymore.
The rats are leaving the ship. I don't know. Maybe it's like a boy band, you know? Once you're not young and cute anymore, they replace you with someone younger and cuter. Only, you know, he was never cute to begin with. So maybe that falls apart.
That's really the problem with Charlie is he's aging out rather quickly. Like, is he even going to look like a young conservative by the time coronavirus is done? Especially with his lifestyle?
I think his head is just going to keep growing and his body's going to stay normal size. He'll look like a lollipop.
When you look at the founders of other like young conservative organizations, he's actually finally aging into that group. Maybe he needs another 5 years.
No, it's true. They have
5 to 10 years.
They all like will themselves to start balding when they're like 16. I've seen it.
Right. I feel like young people who vote Democrat are usually considered to be people under the age of like 45. But actual young Democrats, you'd probably say are like 20, 30. With Republicans, the young conservative is usually starts at 45.
Right.
Yeah. You gotta say one more thing about what he says in this clip. Like, it's 100% projection, right? Because people on the left know if Trump wins again, he's probably going to come after us in all the different ways that Charlie Kirk is saying that the radical left, if Biden wins, is going to come after them. Like, I wish Biden would do that, but we all know that he isn't going to. But like the kind of stuff that he's talking about, the kind of intrusion on our civil liberties is absolutely something that the radical right would do.
Yeah, he says that on the same day that half of his colleagues, like Mark Levin and Roger Stone, are talking about Trump using the Insurrection Act to make sure he can control the election. Like, I mean, absolutely. It's also probably very sad to Charlie, and maybe this is why he's plugging his own stuff, that Candace Owens, in terms of clout, has completely eclipsed him. Like, he used to be the person who's like, I got Candace here, and now it's, who's Charlie Kirk? That's weird. Weird.
Freaking Laura Loomer just won a primary. He must feel awesome about that.
That's true. She can actually exercise power.
Like, I feel like the last time he saw her, she was like chained to the door of Twitter, or like getting kicked out of the whatever Republican convention that was that she got kicked out of. It's a PAC. Yeah. Something PAC. CPAC.
CPAC,
right? Yeah. CPAC,
yeah.
The
and now
political action.
Sorry, guys, my brain is not working very well today. And now she's like winning primaries. Charlie Kirk, do better.
Yeah. Charlie Kirk's let the even further extreme far right people take over, and I guess he's got yeah. And they didn't even have to wear diapers to do it.
Oh my God.
You know, that note is so funny because you hear this just narrative pushed by a lot of members of Republicans in Congress and given like some kind of heat by certain members of Democrats that the left has gone crazy. It's the left that's gone crazy. Charlie Kirk has to fight rearguard actions against explicit Nazis trying to encroach on his turf. Like, we don't really have that problem at MR. Like, we got people that criticize us for whatever, reason that we're this or that. But I don't see any like Maoists saying like we need to start like killing everyone with eyeglasses. That is like really like encroaching onto the Majority Report territory. The right has gone crazy.
Which shows the failings of the Majority Report.
Yeah, we're not radicalizing people enough.
All right, let's take some phone calls. Let's go to 716. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
You hear me?
I hear you. Do you guys hear the caller?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Go ahead. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Dan from Sacramento.
Hey, Dan from Sacramento.
Wow. I never expected to get through the phones ever. Like, I'm really excited.
You might have been able to take advantage of that phone problem because I had to log back out of the phones and log back in, and you were the first call to come in when I had to do that. So you got lucky.
Yo, you have no idea. I'm like, today is the day, and I just kept calling back, and I'm like, I got this, and it worked. So I'm so happy about that.
Perfect. So what would you like to talk about?
So first of all, let me just start off by saying I love you all. And the way I actually found your show was like one of those chain link kind of events where before the election and the primary started, I was a pretty, I would say run of the mill type of Democrat. And I would watch CNN all day and just take all that in. And then I remember coming across a video of that someone did of Bernie Sanders where they made their own their own ad where they would take clips of things that people would say on the mainstream media, and then they would the guy would put up conflicting evidence to show Bernie actually wasn't the person that they were trying to say he was.
Right.
Which and that clip led me to Rising, which then led me to Michael's show, which led me to the Majority Report. So it's just cool how that all happened. But what I wanted to kind of mention today was the idea of people forming opinions of other people that they see online from just clips. And just with that Bernie Sanders scenario, my opinion of Bernie Sanders is completely formed off of clips that I would see people play of them on mainstream media. And I think sometimes, especially in a lot of the YouTube shows, people form opinions off of, various personalities because of those small clips. And to be quite honest, when I first, was listening to the Majority Report, a lot of the stuff that Jamie said, if you just take small clips of what she said, I'm wow, this sounds kind of fringe. But now that I've listened to you all every day, I'm oh, I couldn't imagine hearing a story without hearing Jamie's opinion. So, but if I would have just kind of taken those small clips that people might use of you all on different shows, then it totally wouldn't be a realistic aspect of what the show represents and what you bring to the table. So I feel
well, that's why people use clips. I mean, obviously there are time constraints where you can't play an entire other show, but there are ways to show things in context for segments. And you do that all the time, and it's done purposefully. I can assure you that for the most part.
Yeah. I just want to say to the caller, I think it's frankly a lot better than it was 25 years ago, because the clip would fly past you on a TV screen for even shorter time than people are posting things to Twitter now, and make an entirely worse impression.
Also on TV, you can't go find the clip yourself and get the context yourself if you're someone who does that.
Right.
And the full clip.
I think exactly. And I think the key is that I think clips are an important tool, actually. And I think that clip-based commentary is something that we will continue to do on this show. But the key is that when you do something like that, you're open to the dialogue about what you said about it and how you contextualized it. And we always are. That's why we're the debate Sam type people, right? With Joe Rogan recently played a clip of ours talking about Dave Rubin, and then stopped it right after Nomiki said can't deplatform that without getting into what we actually got into. He didn't really give the full impression of what that conversation was about. And what he should do is have Sam actually on the show, like Sam would have for Rogan, because we play Rogan clips. We would have anybody on the show who we play clips of. And I think that's really what matters.
Well, we'll just take the Charlie Kirk clip we just played. If that clip would have been super disingenuous if we played it where we played it and cut off Charlie Kirk saying right before that, here's what insane people say. And then he proceeded to, and then he was acting as somebody else. But we know from watching Charlie Kirk that this is what he believes, and there is no context that's going to change that Charlie Kirk clip. You don't that's the full context of that point he made.
Yeah, and that's what I love so much about this show is that, I think with a lot of other shows, most of the people that are, hosting it, they pretty much agree with one another, where I feel as though all of you have such a variety of experiences and knowledge that I feel like I don't have to watch 100 shows to get a bunch of different point of views. So I can hear what Jamie thinks, I can hear what Matt thinks, I can hear what Sam thinks. And sometimes you guys spar over the things and it's just such a good conversation. And then I could walk away and think, what out of that do I kind of mesh or agree with and why? So that's what I just really appreciate about the show and, the Michael Brooks show. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you all. I listen to you every day. And I'm just thankful that I have a job that allows me to do that.
That's awesome. I love people listening at work.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for calling in. It means a lot. Yeah,
listening on company time is definitely praxis.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like Sam has kind of a love-hate relationship with the amount that I I don't know, peck around with him, shall we say, when it comes to things we disagree on.
A pun of your own name. Very clever.
But I feel like it makes the show stronger.
I think you all keep them young.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Look, I think I've always thought this when and we've had arguments through every generation of the show, even before I was here. And the key that's different between us and the IDW is a scientific concept or scientific, understanding, which is there's no light without heat. You actually have to argue these things. So the IDW gets all these guys and basically they create a safe space and they will never invite somebody on that says hey, this is actually reinforcing some structurally heinous things like racism and sexism and you're naturalizing it. They will never have somebody on that says you're naturalizing hierarchies. That's not intellectual diversity they're curious about. We love to have these debates because frankly, look, the libertarian debates is maybe one of the first things this show built its name out of, right? And I'll just underline it. There's no light without heat. So when Brett Weinstein tries to when he tries to get me fired, and he goes directly to Sam, he never invites me on the show. I would have gone on the Dark Horse podcast. I still will go on the Dark Horse. I'll explain myself. He doesn't want that. They do not want any of this conversation because it's a threat to them in a way that it's actually an asset to us.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in though, caller.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Love you guys.
Aw.
Listen, I know all about storms over clips without the context.
Maybe we shouldn't get into it on air. Yeah, I'd be curious about those stories in private.
Yeah.
We always do our best here at the Majority Report to provide adequate context for the clips we're discussing.
Exactly. And full platform for any sort of correction.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like Sam gives too much of a platform sometimes to the people who we disagree with, but that is one cool thing about this show, I guess. If you want to hear Sam argue with a libertarian for half an hour at 3 p.m., you can.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened in a while, but maybe we're due.
Let's go to the phones again because there's a bunch of calls. So let's, go through some of them. 989. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Matthew Riley. How's it going, guys?
How you doing, Matt?
It's funny. There's this. I'm really into professional football and NFL betting and scouting and fantasy football and all that. And there's a show that does a stream the weekdays, and they usually start like 11:20, 11:15, and they run for about an hour. And I was in there today. Oh, they're called Football Guys. The Football Guys. And I was in there today, and they only have around 80 people watch the stream live. And I was like, you know what? I really hate that you guys stream at the same time as when the Majority Report starts, but I always go with you guys.
Oh, well, thank you.
Because I'm a football guy. I mean, no, I'm a football guy. And then I said, I just said that basically. And like somebody else popped back like immediately, like within like 30 seconds, they're like, love the Majority Report, R.I.P. Michael Brooks. And I was like, hell yeah, dude. Rest in power, Michael, man. Like
on a football stream, that's awesome.
So
yeah.
I know, dude. Yeah, like you pick 80 random people out of the whole universe and put them in that one little live stream. And one of them actually said something back to me like, no, dude. I mean, that's like my favorite, one of my favorite interviews that I've seen Michael do. And
I mean, Michael,
like
was,
anytime
in my opinion, one of Michael's strongest. Obviously, he was very good on foreign policy, and he had a wide range that he was able to cover. But to me, one of the things he was best at because of his knowledge and is able to just intertwine his wittiness with is whenever he discussed the intellectual dark web.
Yeah.
Yes. Anytime you could get him riffing on like Jordan Peterson. Or just like he could burn them so good, dude.
Yeah.
And I love that, man. But yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I hope you guys are doing good. I think we're finally maybe starting to pull out of this thing, hopefully.
What
thing?
There are a number of things.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, but I don't know. It's a lot harder for you guys in New York than it is for me, and I'm here in this lonely little Michigan here. So,
well,
like up north.
Oh, right. I guess you're just talking about the overall, just how everyone is dealing with everything. Yeah, I mean, I'm personally very worried about what's going to happen with the pandemic as we approach the colder months. I think people are really not paying enough attention to what's going to happen. It's gonna suck. Hopefully it's bad. Not, but it's gonna it could possibly be bad.
There's all these there's a big amount of people who are like these. There's like a set of anti-maskers, and they're not the GOP kind, right? But they thought like everyone's been overblowing this COVID thing, and I keep wanting them to be right, and then coronavirus comes back with like an incredibly strong and horrifying performance, and like I mean, how many? I forget. I don't even want to cite the numbers. An insane amount of people per day in India are getting it. I mean. And this is all before, like we said, a lot of Europe is increased.
And as you say that, and not to interrupt you, but as you say, bring up the India thing, I don't want to forget this. Those same people who are anti-maskers, they've been citing countries like India as, look, they live in, it's a third world country. They have, the poorest people there living among, and they say all these terrible things. But then they bring up but look how they're dealing with it. They have those strong immune systems built up, and none of them are dying. They got all proved wrong, and they're just ignoring it. Like, that's just not the facts. It's not the case. This thing is affecting everyone everywhere. Sorry to interrupt you, Matt. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying we are seeing second waves in places in Europe. And it's like, obviously, I mean, look, if it doesn't happen here and every place just gets it under control, and New York, for instance, stays on this very low case rate, I would love it. Like, the thing about being a leftist is you'd love to be proved wrong about a lot of this stuff. Like, if climate change wasn't as serious as we think it is, love it actually. If basically fascist consolidation of power wasn't real, would love to be proven wrong about that too. I would love to be proven wrong about all this stuff actually.
Yeah, if capitalism could be fixed to provide a decent life for everyone and not, crisis after crisis, well, I'd probably still want to get rid of it, but it would be nice.
Yeah.
Right, and it's the opposite of what they all think. Obviously, the right thinks that the left will be disappointed if these things don't happen because they'll be proved wrong, which is obviously not the case because we actually care. We don't care about being, being right and shoving it in their face. If we're wrong about this, that's great. The problem is we're right about it. That's the problem.
Yeah, there was this tweet by about this National Review article yesterday about these these forced hysterectomies at the private prison. And let's see if I can find this. It's just psycho the way that they think the left responds to this stuff. God, I tweet way too much. Basically said This is a very important article for anyone who is Kenner Sen. Oh, damn. I'm sorry. I wish I could find it. Basically, like, the leftists are gleeful over this story. Like, glee is not what I feel. I feel horrified and like morbid and scared for the future. Like, you talk about like what Charlie Kirk is feeling. That makes me feel like Charlie Kirk when I feel stuff like that. Like, and I don't know, like that. This
yeah, sincerely too, not like the crocodile tears that he's crying.
Exactly. Like, honestly, I don't see this headed in a good direction. I don't think 5 years from now it's going to be better either. Like, I think it'll be moderately, slightly better if Biden wins this than Trump. But I think we're on trajectories right now that are horrible, and I want to be proven wrong about that, actually.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call, though, caller.
Hey, I love you, brothers.
Thank you. Thanks for the call now, caller. Maybe I could come up with a better catchphrase.
No,
Jamie, you wanna take it away?
Yeah. So I'm gonna take a stab at this because this story and this stuff is very important to me. So, as we found out, I believe yesterday, the city of Louisville, Kentucky, has agreed to pay a $12 million settlement to the family of Brianna Taylor. And this is separate from any criminal case, right? The cops who killed her have not been arrested. They have not been charged. Only one of them has been fired, but it was for unrelated reasons. So they have.
Do we even have their names even been released?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm pretty sure they have been. I looked at this story yesterday. So we have a $12 million settlement in the civil suit. And we have some milquetoast reforms that are supposed to satisfy everyone, I guess. And I wanted to break down a little bit of what's wrong with this, because I think even to the average layperson, you can see that this is probably not going to do much of anything at all. So first of all, we should note that the $12 million is not coming out of the police budget. It's not coming out of the pockets of the cops who murdered Brianna Taylor in her own home. It's coming from the taxpayers of Louisville. And I think the policymakers who orchestrated this were very careful to sidestep anything that actually defunded the police or reduced their power or their funding. Although I think some of these measures do take steps to sort of co-opt some of these demands and do things that kind of sort of look like they rhyme with it. But that's not enough. So I thought I would go into a little bit of the reforms that they proposed. And, this is even assuming that the cops are actually going to do them, which is, a big assumption. And the sad part is it was probably hard to even get these through in the first place. But okay, let's go through them, shall we? So I have an article in Vox. You want to pull that up, Matt?
Oh, yeah,
it's actually a pretty good article explaining some of these proposed reforms and why they're probably not going to do anything. So good job, Vox. So the first thing, I'm going to quote it, is a plan to create a housing credit program to incentivize officers to live within qualified census tracts or areas identified by the Department of Housing and Urban Development as having a poverty rate of 25% or more, or where 50% of households have incomes below 60% of the area median gross income. So they're going to incentivize cops to live in communities where the rent is already much cheaper than the rent they're currently paying by making it even cheaper for them. I think we can all see that this is not going to cause the cops to move in there, but even if it did, there's very little evidence that moving individual cops into poor neighborhoods positively impacts their treatment of the people in those neighborhoods. Because as we know, the problem is not the individual cops. The problem is systemic. And Vox has a nice little report on this and some data to back it up, because Vox loves data. And also, I just thought of this, considering what Amber Geiger did to Botham Jean in his own home, it might even put people in greater danger to have armed police officers living in the same buildings as them. Okay? Also, officers would be encouraged to volunteer at least 2 hours during the workday per pay period in the community they serve. They're not going to do that. If they do it, it's going to be window dressing. These are things that are designed to improve people's perceptions of the police, right? Not the police's treatment of people, which is the thing that we actually should care about. Okay. 2, social workers are going to supposedly work alongside the police, but they won't replace them. Now, this is a problem because it may sound a little bit like some of the stuff we say when we say defund the police. But when we talk about defunding the police and redistributing the funds, the point is we want social workers to be in contact with people before they have a crisis, right? Stop these incidents before they start, not just after the cops have already been called. Now, this does nothing to shrink the police's contact with the public. It would certainly be good to be able to call a trained mental health professional instead of a cop with a gun if someone is having an episode. I just don't believe that that's what's going to happen here. We also don't know that the funding is going to be substantial, right? Because there are plenty of social workers right now. There are plenty of social workers in prisons, for example, but they're already incredibly overburdened. It's hard to get a hold of them. And I'm guessing the funding for social work here is extremely inadequate. Now, 3, we have some changes to no-knock warrants, right? Because supposedly the cops that killed Brianna Taylor were serving a no-knock warrant, although some people did say that they knocked before they busted down the door and started shooting people, her and her boyfriend. So we have Brianna's law already outlawing no-knock warrants for whatever that may do. We have a few other measures in here. A commanding officer must review and approve all search warrants before an officer seeks judicial approval for the warrant in an attempt to calculate and assess risk. The department plans to overhaul the process and the chain of command for simultaneous search warrants. Oh, and the department now requires that an EMS or paramedics be at the scene where force or entry warrants are used, right? So if the cops shoot you 10 times in the back, they'll say, oh, well, at least we have a paramedic to try to bring you back to life, which, probably isn't going to work in most of these cases. And it's just like an ass backwards way of dealing with police violence and murders. So we have here a bunch of reforms that there is no indication the cops are going to follow. If they do, it's not going to do anything, even as reported by the liberals at Vox. And number 4, sorry, I missed one. We have, quote, to foster accountability, LMPD will implement the police integrity software, IAPRO, which will track use of force incidents, citizen complaints, and investigations, among other events. Right. So now we're gonna track police violence a little bit better because that's clear. I mean, is this obvious to everyone else as it is to me? Like, that's not how you stop it. We have body cams. We have all this stuff. They haven't done shit. Okay. The only thing that's going to reduce police violence is to defund the police, reduce their contact with the public, grow other social services to stop the root causes of interpersonal harm, and crowd out this system, which exists solely to keep people oppressed and to enforce capitalist property relations and white supremacy.
When you mentioned the software thing at first, before you completed that sentence for a second, I thought they were going to float installing a new operating system in cops themselves. Like it was a flawed software and they've upgraded the OS or something like that.
God. Yeah, because
it is.
Putting robots in cop uniforms has never gone wrong for anyone.
Right, of course. It's. Again, I want to stress on there's been so many situations where someone with mental health issues have been killed by a police officer when the situation shouldn't even, the police nor the person going through the episode shouldn't have even been put in that situation. I mean, these reforms are certainly not going to solve anything.
Yeah.
This is what I'm thinking of actually when you were saying these reforms. I was thinking about this. There was a recent case, I think it was just a few days ago, where a man approached the police. Police were called to a house, and a man with a knife approached the officer, and the officer shot and killed him. Now, it later came out that the family didn't even call the police. They called a different line for help for specifically people with mental health issues and explain the situation. And someone still got the cops to go there. It's just the whole system and how people think is just wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to, I'm not the professional here to come up with the solutions, but I see what the problems are. And the people who are the professionals here need to come to figure out what they're going to do about this, because it's not working.
Mm-hmm. And I should add, right, I do not agree that jailing killer cops is going to act as a deterrent in any way to police violence, but counterposed against obviously milquetoast, insufficient, do nothing reforms like this one, like all of these, I can see why people would find that preferable in terms of the ideas that have been floated. However, I don't think that jailing, quote unquote, jailing killer cops is ultimately the answer either. It's just probably not going to happen. 538, the wonks are like really on the ball today. 538 actually has a pretty good article explaining why cops are so rarely charged, even in incidents of egregious murder and misconduct, and why that's probably not going to change. They have like some experts talking about it. But even if that did happen, this problem is systemic, right? It's not just a few bad apples, and we don't want to reinforce the idea that it is, right? This is an oppressive system. This is a system-wide problem. And I think when people say justice for Brianna, they want to jail these cops, I think that's because this is the kind of justice that we have most commonly been taught to believe exists in society. But I think if you gave most people, most families of victims of police murder the choice between getting revenge on the specific cops who killed their loved ones and making changes that make sure that nobody else ever has to go through this, I feel like most people would choose the latter. Is that crazy? Like, I really believe that this message of disarm, defund, and abolish, there's so much good data behind it. I think the more that it spreads, and the more it is becoming a very widespread demand, at least as much as jailing killer cops. I think that that's really going to be the more fruitful path to go down. You know, on the other hand, I'm not going to shed any tears if any of these cops do go to jail, but like judging from, we don't really have good data on how jailing killer cops affects police violence because it simply doesn't happen. But if you look at the stats for other crimes, certainly the incidence of being charged and sent to jail does not act as a deterrent for any other crime. So I'm not sure why it would here.
I do think the police are a little bit more aware that they're surely getting away with it. Whereas,
yeah,
I think it is. I mean, again, you can advocate that it's not what's the best way to deal with it. But I would certainly say that seeing a few cops finally get put in jail for just flagrantly killing people who are unarmed or not putting them in a situation where they need to draw fire on them, I do think there will be an effect. I don't think it's the same as other crimes, to be quite honest with you.
I want to also just say, like, if you look at the Sergeant Benevolence Association Twitter account as indicative of the problem we have just or rotten to the core with police in this country, I think I agree with Jamie. Like, this is the revolution versus reform dichotomy, like revolution where you have a wholesale change in personnel, structure, and goals. Like, I don't trust any of these cops. Like, the amount of mendacity, like we've all been prepared. Like, cops are liars is something like we've known. I mean, if anyone's been paying attention to the last 5 years, but I think this year particularly, the amount of mendacity I've seen, the amount of lies from police departments, just blatant lying. Like, this is an institution that does not have public trust and cannot win it back, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you could just see by, it's been so flagrantly done, these cops getting away with what they're doing and doing what they're doing, that, there's a reason why when these Black Lives Matter protests first broke out this year, end of May, early June, that the polling that took place showed that for the first time, the majority of Americans were viewed BLM in a positive way, because it's become so clear to even the most, the most turned out people who don't pay attention to the political dialogue and discourse of every day. But it's just so in your face now that you know it's happening, and you can no longer deny it or pretend it's not an issue, or pretend that it's just a few bad apples. Again, if you live in reality, but there's a number of people who don't.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like polling on that is discouraging a little bit, because that spike definitely happened right after the burning of the precinct in Minneapolis. Approval of Black Lives Matter skyrocketed in the immediate aftermath of that, and then over the course of time it starts whittling down again because the media keeps stressing things like property damage. Let's see if I can find that. I kind of stopped looking. It's easy. It's a lot easier to be a producer when you're not also talking on mic. But
oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, I could vamp for a second and mention one more thing, which is, putting those killer cops in jail might keep those specific cops from killing people for the specific amount of time that they're in jail, which is probably not going to happen in the first place because the system is not designed to put police in jail. But if it ever were to happen, if they weren't in a white power gang before, they definitely will be when they come out, and they're probably going to be even more dangerous.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think there's many times of cop murders, you have the one who's like a specific racist who has multiple different incidents in his past that are going to come up, and then you have the one who might not have those long history of thuggish incidents, but they're put in a position by their job and they end up murdering someone anyway, and then the blue line covers for them too. I found that poll in here. Here's Derek Thompson.
And we absolutely have to break the power of police unions too, because they play a major role in making sure that no cops are ever held accountable.
Yeah, here's the support. So it basically just you did get a rise in opposed just keep going up. This is, I think, the impact of media, just super discouraging spike in support, and then to back down. There's more people that support it, but there's also more people that don't support it, and fewer people haven't made their mind up.
Well, I think that's it's still up overwhelmingly from how it was in previous years. But I think that's a natural reaction for people to agree when it first kicks off. And then, of course, you're going to have the people who a couple months down the line, in their heart, they still agree. But this whole thing's gone on for too long. I just want peace right now. There's always going to be those people, and that's surely a number of Democrats feel that way. The people who just want to go back to brunch when Donald Trump is out of office. Those people exist. So I don't think the polling shows that it's all, in my opinion, this is obviously an opinion, has dropped that much. I still think it's much different than how it previously was in a positive way in terms of how people view Black Lives Matter.
I 100% agree. I definitely wouldn't want to take back, I take back some of the horrible incidents that have happened, but in terms of I do think returning back to the no heat without light, I think the longer the stuff is exposed, I think people's impressions will be. I just think we're fighting against this media apparatus that is basically going to poison people's minds against it the entire way.
Right. But I also feel like, once you hit your mark of 6 months is too much or something like that, then pretty much you've gotten everyone who isn't going to stick around off already. There's no one who's going to say, I'm positive until about a year. People have short attention spans. They want this, if I feel like we're at the level point and it's only going to be spiked up.
Yeah. I hope so. The media definitely needs to do better in the way they cover this, but they're probably never going to. And they are our enemies, and we can't rely on them to be any kind of. I even hate the word ally. I feel like it's been so poisoned by the libs, but we can't rely on them to be allies or accomplices or help in any way in this fight. But, we got our work cut out for us, obviously. But I don't know. I've been really inspired by even stuff like the Bernie Sanders campaign, taking something like Medicare for All from this quote unquote fringe demand to something that every Democratic candidate running is forced to comment on. He moved the window on that with the help of everyone else, everyone supporting him, everyone who'd been calling for it for years and years. And I really think that this is the moment that we can push the window in the same way on defund and eventually abolish as a slogan. And not just a slogan, like a thing that will un-F the world.
All right, let me just, we got a few interesting IMs. I want to read just a few of them, and then maybe we'll take another call, and then, we'll see how it goes. James in Jersey City, Charlie Kirk doing his best work getting people on the left to get over themselves and vote Biden, and I appreciate it. Pajama Boy says, Sam has content, Skull. I know Jamie and Sam love each other, but the fighting sometimes is great content. Right, we do it all for the content.
The content.
Yeah, the clicks still pay the same.
No.
Right.
I did it all for the content. I'm just imagining
you're doing
Sam dressed
right.
like Fred Durst, making a music video, and we're all like piping him behind him. The content.
Right. You don't have to.
a
You don't have to imagine Sam dressed as Fred Durst. You could just go to any Ken episode.
Oh, that's so true.
Tom Hoffman says the University of Michigan Grad Student Union accepted an offer from the university under the threat of an impending injunction. A horrible deal, but they had no other options. Solidarity forever. Ugh.
Yeah. Disgusting. University of Michigan.
Budhole says, how might one wean a paranoid, anti-left, propaganda-targeted, and safety-fearing mother off of Facebook once its talons are deep within her well-being? Whatever they do to keep 50-plus-year-old women scared for their lives in the suburbs and worrying about unavoidable white genocide works very well, unfortunately. We've actually talked about this a lot in just maybe not the last episode, maybe the episode before that or the one before that. I mean, unfortunately, some people are just lost at this point. The QAnon conspiracy theories have really seeped through. I mean, we just had months of people thinking that, it's still going on when you look at the Oregon and California and Washington wildfire conspiracies. But we had people thinking that from rumors being spread on Facebook that there were busloads of Antifa being brought into small yokel towns across America to burn down their homes and stuff like that. And people believed it. Just last week, the FBI in Oregon and local law enforcement to put out warnings begging people to stop spreading rumors about Antifa setting wildfires because people were showing up at the fires with guns ready to shoot people who were in Antifa. And then what happened is when journalists would show up to cover the wildfires as news, they get run out of town because the people would think they were Antifa. It's just ridiculous. And there are some people who are just so far gone with this stuff.
Well,
I don't know what to do.
I would just say everybody wants to approach this as if there's a secret cheat code argument or something that can win people over. And it's not about the ideas at all. This is entirely a social phenomenon. So
right. You're dealing with people who live in a different reality. So you can't even bring them something because in their reality, they'll just debunk it.
Yeah, your only hope to shift anyone in your family, anyone you know, is to have allies that person also views positively and try to basically make them see your conversations with them, have conversations with them when it's you outnumber them, let them see how other people think. But it has to be with other people in their circle that they actually trust, because it's never about the arguments.
Yeah, it's all about the social relationships or lack thereof, right?
Exactly.
Because a lot of people fall into this stuff because they are incredibly alienated and atomized and just fed a steady diet of, the social media, which is not the same thing, but it hits some of the same receptors. So it's providing for something that they lack.
Yep.
Right. Just listen, here's the cheat code. Just call up their buddy, Donald Trump, and get him to sit down and talk with them and say, this is all bull.
Or you subscribe to Literary Hangover Twitch at the premium level.
Ooh, smart. Oh, that was,
you'll get the
Patreon. I gotta cut you off there and go patreon.com/Matt Binder.
Put some parental controls on the television. Only they're controls for your parents, so they can't watch Fox News all day.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the phones one last time. 513, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hi. Is this me?
This is you. You're on the air.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, I was calling. It's Greg from Cincinnati.
Hey, Greg from Cincinnati.
Just want to say, thank you guys so much for everything you do, and kind of helped me get through the last 6 months with basically I live alone, so it's kind of been not always great, but yeah. So I just wanted to say that, and that's pretty much all I have. So I really appreciate it, and hope you guys are doing well. So thanks.
Thanks for the call. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, that
Yeah,
was
you too.
Solidarity on living alone.
all right, that was good though, because we can then go to one more call because that was like less than a minute. 419, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Gene. I'm calling from Toledo.
What's up, Gene from Toledo?
Nothing much, man. I actually wanted to call and tell you guys. I actually had a bone to pick with you guys. All right, everybody talks about the unity that the left has to have, and I just want to, Jake Euchre has been doing a lot of stuff. I mean, Justice Democrats. He's got this new pack, like Rebel Pack or something, that really wants to take it to the right wing, and just the unity. Like, why don't we on this show, which I love, by the way, you guys are awesome. Why don't we promote, Rebel Pack or you guys always promote Justice Dems, but, I think Jake Euchre's like a diamond in the rough. I want to see Jamie on TYT a lot more. I mean, how do you guys feel about that?
I think I got to say, I think I would invest too
think you
much
have it
on
backwards,
independent
actually.
left media personalities. Like I think Jenks did a lot of good work, but I don't think unity among leftist media personalities is really the unity is super vital is going to deliver
Well,
something.
I actually think it's important in terms of we see what happens when the right wing owns YouTube and Facebook. I mean, it does matter. It does matter. Exactly. But you're also got it backwards. TYT is the largest left wing media organization. If anyone needs help being promoted, it's the Antifada. It's Doomed with Matt Binder. It's Literary Hangover. I think you're going after I think you're calling the wrong show.
Yeah, I think
TYT doesn't let you call up, but I mean, all right. So I'm just saying, like, mix it up a little bit. I'd love to see Jamie up more on TYT or something.
But you're acting like that's our choice. You got to call TYT and say you want to see Jamie on TYT. We don't got that power.
I haven't been asked.
TYT's decision.
Dude, I loved it when I used to be able to download the free app on the TYT app. Man, I loved it. And if there was a program that you guys had where I could pay, I don't know, $15 a month to get you guys plus the Antifada, or however, I don't know how it would work. But if I could get like the Antifada, Literary Hangover, that TMBS, Doom, that would be, I don't know. I just think something in the works like that would. I don't know. It would reach a lot more people.
I completely agree with you on the fact that the right online is very well organized with promoting each other's stuff.
Yes.
Even if there's money being exchanged hands, I don't know what their deal is, but regardless of what it is, they have some sort of deal where they're constantly pushing each other. And that is definitely missing on the left. There are larger left-wing shows that simply do not promote other leftist personalities. And thus, we let the right control the online media discourse. And I do think it's a problem. I actually think the Majority Report is probably one of the better ones based on Sam's guests. I mean, Sam really reaches out and has everyone on. I mean, it's fairly simple there in that case.
Earlier, Matt, you introed a piece of Democracy Now! And I think that's great. I mean, there's not a lot of, like, the Democracy Now! Narrative never gets carried over. But I just feel like if, as the left, if we just, we team up with, doing more of the Democracy Now! Show and, show a clip that, I don't know, like Ken Klippenstein stuff when he used to work at UIT. I just feel like we talk a lot about unity. And you guys have the power, man. That's how I feel. I just feel like you guys are strong. I love you guys. So
Thanks, man.
wish the best for you guys, man.
I mean, one thing I notice a lot, it's sort of tangentially related to this, and I think it's related to the sort of necessity to brand, to create your brand, is very often on Twitter, or I think there's an impulse leftists have to say something and not say where they got it from. Like a take, and not like really like give people like, oh, here's the actual article I read that prompted this take, because there's actually a little bit of currency to implying that you came up with something on your own.
Yeah.
And I think like that sort of thing is people should do more. I mean, I try to use this platform a lot. Like I've got over 30,000 followers on Twitter. I consciously try to cultivate smaller accounts that I think cultivate followings for smaller accounts that I think are worthwhile. I think we got Jenks back if when he needs it. I don't know. I don't know about Rebel Pack though. Maybe I should.
Does he have our back?
Yes.
Is he gonna have me on? Is the question. I don't know. Not up to me, but I would do it.
I've never been on TYT. I've never been on I mean, I've been invited on a lot. I've been on MSNBC. Never been on TYT.
I try to. I will say I always try to cite my sources because maybe it's just because I've had it pounded into me from an early age that if I plagiarize, I will ruin my entire life forever. But whether it's a conversation I had with my DSA comrades or in my caucus of Burge, like I always try to give people credit because it's like, I know we're all sort of encouraged to be these like competing pundits or whatever, but that's not how knowledge works. That's not how opinions work. Unless you are just totally isolated and not reading anyone or talking to anyone, your knowledge and your opinions are part of a collective effort, and it's important to acknowledge that. I also agree that it would be nice to have some sort of bundle on the business end of things. I think leftist media is a nice little community in that we all go on each other's shows and we do cross promotion that way. But when it comes to the business end, we are all siloed into our own individual Patreons or YouTubes or whatever, and forced to compete on a capitalist market. And it would be really nice if we could somehow bundle ourselves into a network with, maybe you get a little discount on a subscription from what it would have been if you subscribed to everyone individually. I don't know how to do that. I know nothing about tech or business, but if somebody else did it, I would sign on.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big problems you have is the right has big major funding, funders behind all of this stuff. That makes it easy to centralize this. That's why the Blaze can hire Dave Rubin and stuff like that, right? Like TYT is the only thing that's at scale to do that. Even like Chapo, if you look, they make plenty of revenue, but if you divide that revenue by how many people they have, it's actually not what you would need to have a huge operation like that. So I think it's structurally the necessity is there, but I don't know the way to do it yet.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there are some attempts at networks happening. Like, we're a part of this thing called Opt Out that honestly, I don't understand it super well. It just seemed like they had a lot of people I liked on there. So I was like, yeah, I'll be on it too. Sure. This other
you don't
channel,
know this, Jamie, but you just signed away all the rights to the Antifada.
Yeah, no.
I didn't sign anything.
It's owned by private equity.
But it seems cool. Oh my God, I'm doing the worst job today at explaining things that I should know about.
It's like basically like a select marketplace, right? Like they decide like we want these leftist podcasts. So, and I think that stuff is good. I mean, it's so weird to think about. Like how I found a lot of leftist podcasts was on this iPhone app called Overcast, I think, that had like this best of the left show that put like Pacman and TYT, a Majority Report, in it. And if it wasn't for that, like just randomly looking in their like windowed marketplace of like, here's what we recommend in politics, I probably would have never heard about like some of those as early as I did. But I don't know. Like,
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, you got to like
caller. Thanks.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Meets
Take
TV.
care, guys. Thank you.
See ya.
Meets TV is doing some cool stuff, bringing people together, making shows, making content, making money. And this other thing called Party Crashers that's launching soon seems kind of cool. I think MR is a part of it.
There's people putting things in motion, trying to make things happen. We'll see how it turns out. Hopefully it does turn out well.
Yeah.
There's one more.
The margins are pretty slim in this business. It's true.
I know we're running out of time here, but there's one more clip I really wanted to get to. It's that clip that I dropped in there, Matt, of the House member, the Republican from Texas, Jody Arrington.
Got it.
Okay, so this is really a fantastic clip because it is perhaps one of the most backwards clips I've ever seen in my life. I mean, really, you have to wonder what was going through this guy's head. This is a Republican from Texas, a House member, Representative Jody Arrington, and he's talking on the House floor. The House was trying to get a bill. I'm not sure how it turned out, but they wanted to pass a bill that basically condemned anti-Asian rhetoric because of the coronavirus, COVID-19. That's it. Seems pretty simple to sign. Seems like something you would want to do. But this really pissed off Republican Representative Jody Arrington. Let's play that clip.
This is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman, my dear friend from Ohio, for the opportunity to speak. I'm listening to my colleagues and the recent speaker. Where is that passion? Where is that indignation over the violent mobs that are terrorizing our communities, that are assaulting our law enforcement officers? People are being killed in cold blood in once great American cities, and not nigh a word is said in this great chamber about what's happening to our fellow Americans whose rights are being trampled. Instead, they want to hyperventilate over this pettiness. We know what it's about, and the American people know what it's about, Madam Speaker. They know good and well this is about scoring political points. They've seen it over and over, day in and day out, for the last 2 years under this Pelosi leadership of this great representative body. Obstruction, more political theater, and just dividing us. This is dividing our country. This is opportunism like I've never seen before. That you can't refer to a virus by its place of origin. We've been doing that for time immemorial. And now we can't call it the Chinese virus. Somehow that's offensive. This is about dividing our country. This is about stoking the flames of racial dissension. It's un-American. It's unacceptable for our leaders.
Pause it. The thing that is stoking the racial tension in this country, according to Rep. Jody Arrington, is that Republicans can't call the virus a racist name. Not the fact that they're calling the virus a racist name. That's fine. That brings people together. But the thing that's tearing us apart is that we can't call COVID-19 the Chinese virus. I mean, I would love to understand that thought process. I would love to understand how he prepared this line and said to himself that this is going to make a lot of sense. I'm going to come out looking smart. I mean, there's been hate crimes, attacks on Asian Americans and Asian immigrants in this country since January, February. There's been numerous cases of Asian people being attacked on the subways, walking down the street. In Brooklyn, in New York City, Brooklyn, an 80-some-odd-year-old Asian woman was lit on fire because of this. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what this guy is talking about. That because there is an anti-Asian sentiment because of coronavirus, and it's perpetuated by the Republican Party and the right wing because they want to use things like the Chinese virus. And I mean, that seems to be the thing that's tearing the country apart and providing racial tension. I don't know what this guy's talking about.
The tension he wants us all to come together and hate Chinese people. That's the tension. Mm-hmm. And they're standing in the way of that, about bringing us all together in hatred of the. And for the record, the thing you said about we've been calling viruses by their place of origin since time immemorial.
We don't do that.
We don't do that. And we do it wrongly when we do that. The Spanish flu, I'm pretty sure came from America, right?
It's not from Spain. It's
not from Spain.
I'm not 100% sure where it's from, but I know 100% it's not from Spain.
Right.
Because I've read probably a half a dozen articles since the coronavirus, explaining how no, the Spanish flu is not called the Spanish flu because it came from Spain.
They just had a freer press and were able to more readily report on it for what was going on in Europe than because of World War I and stuff.
Well,
right.
So I feel like I might be taking us a bit far afield with this, but whatever. To be fair, this virus did originate in China, but the reasons for that are reasons of global capitalism, which I learned from reading Chuang. The reason why these kinds of modern plagues arose in the first place is a result of human development, which accelerated under capitalism, although certainly we saw things like the Black Plague in Europe, which hastened the fall of feudalism. When we had the most rapidly industrializing human development here in the US, that's where the plagues came about, because that's where humans and animals were living in close contact and creating these kinds of plagues that we hadn't seen before. Now, obviously, we know that China is the industrial heart of globalized capitalism. That's the most rapidly industrializing place. That's where human development is growing the fastest. That's where humans are living alongside factory farms. And that's where human development is encroaching on wild places and coming into contact with viruses that we have not seen before. So if we really want to accurately name it, we should call it the capitalism virus. And part of the reason why it was able to spread the way it did in China is not because of communism. It's actually because of the opposite, because of neoliberalism in China, which has rolled back all of the really good socialized medicine that they used to have and greatly diminished people's ability to access medical care. So if you really want to accurately name it something, you should call it the neoliberal capitalism virus.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the people who noted the expansion into like basically territories where there's new kinds of bats we haven't interacted with. That's like the Pentagon. It's not Marxists, right? Like we've seen this novel coronavirus has come in for like the past few decades. You can find governmental reports on this being a concern, and it is for exactly the reasons Jamie underlined. And you don't have to be like a ultra leftist to acknowledge that.
And you don't have to be an ultra leftist to read about it in Chuang either. Although if you are an ultra leftist, you'll probably enjoy it a lot.
Ultra leftist sounds like some sort of like a thing when the Power Rangers combine their powers and create the
Super
ultimate.
Nice. Yeah, I mean it's kind of a slur against left-wing communists, going back to a pamphlet written by Lenin called Left-Wing Communism and Infantile Disorder. It's a slur basically against left comms and people that Lenin considered to be ultra-leftists, but I've kind of ironically reappropriated it, and I'm trying to see if I can make it work for me.
Right. All right, guys. So do you want to take another call? What do you want to do? You tell me.
Let's do one final call.
All right, cool.
A quick call.
315, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello, what's up? What's your name? Where are you calling from? You're on the air.
Well, this is the lying dog-faced pony soldier.
What's up?
Calling from Rochester, New York.
Perfect.
I just wanted to let Jamie know that they, in fact, the police department used an LRAD here. I believe it was September 5th.
Oh, shit. Where are you?
Rochester,
New York.
Oh, man. I did not know about that.
Was Rochester where that guy fell and cracked the back of his head?
They're not letting people know about that kind of thing.
Yes, that is.
But yeah, I mean,
fair enough. I'm just going on what I've heard from comrades in other places. I will definitely let my comrades know.
Yeah, I think that this is like it's a two-edged thing, because I think Jamie's exactly right to point out the intimidation factor with these kinds of stories and these sorts of maneuvers. But when they start actually using them, we need to have a fresh batch of outrage ready for it. Right.
Right. I mean, and if anything else, it exacerbates, the intimidation factor of that, how rare it's used. You know,
right.
What does that say about the condition of the police department here? But I just wanted also to let, everybody else out there know that, as it's been said, dissent is the highest form of patriotism. We've had a lot of come so far here. We've gotten the entire deputy, or we've gotten the lieutenant or the police commissioner to resign. We've gotten a lot of his command staff to resign. We're still pushing for Lovely Warren to resign because of her complicity in, hiding the evidence behind the murder of Daniel Prude. And, we've gotten them to vote against an already approved appropriation for a new police substation. $16 million substation.
Jeez.
Something that only 2 weeks ago they said was impossible for us to reverse our vote on, and then it just kind of happened.
Right.
But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. It is being done. Pepper balls are being done. And they actually, just yesterday, they had a hearing session in the city council for all the concerned people had been going to these protests and gave their 3-minute piece on what they had witnessed while they were there. Journalists that might be losing eyeballs for getting shot in the eye with pepper balls. A lot of things. Tear gas canisters, things that, of course, I'm sure are outlawed in the Geneva Convention, but are, of course, totally fine to be used on peaceful protesters. Yeah. A group of 2,000 people trapped on a bridge, hit with an LRAD and pepper balled and tear gassed. America.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thanks.
I want to say it was Buffalo where the guy fell and crashed his head.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
thanks a lot for the call.
I don't know if it helps against LRADs, but I always bring earplugs to a protest just in case. And I think we can actually, whatever you think about the protests in Hong Kong, we can learn a lot about their tactics against the police and the kinds of defensive clothing and protective equipment that they wear, because oftentimes they're quite effective against the weapons that the cops use.
All right.
Yeah.
Ooh, H-Dub says, my partner's uncle lost his wife in the Paradise Fires. He's gone further towards the Q rabbit hole since. Gee, I mean, that's who they go after. That's who they go after, I mean, it's
and they're grist for the Facebook and Twitter mills on this stuff.
Really. Right. And it's pure disgusting opportunism, and just really, it's revolting, to be quite frank. And Science People Don't Care About Your Feelings says the first reports of the 1918 flu were in Kansas. Also, nice. The second wave was the deadliest because it mutates and started killing people within 24 hours, which makes me feel wonderful as we head into the fall and winter months.
I'll just say there's reason to think that coronavirus will not have that same mutation factor. I can't remember. We talked about it on Majority Report a while ago. There's some good news in that regard. And then there's also bad news in the fact that you can catch it again. So just having it once doesn't mean you can't get it again, it looks like. So good news and bad news anyway.
Right. Well,
God, I'm going to go
we'll have those rushed
now.
We'll have those rushed out vaccines before November, right? I mean,
oh yeah.
Yeah, I trust those, right? I mean, the fact that the right's trying to pretend that that's what, Biden and the Democrats are saying is, I mean, it's not shocking, but it's real. I mean, I wouldn't trust anything that was rushed out for political purposes when it comes to medicine.
Well, they don't.
Did you see the poll on that? Even a lot of Republicans don't trust it because they know.
I mean, they're not going to do it, actually. It's just something to say from now until the election. So, certain, idiots.
Well, I would not put it past them to rush out some sort of vaccine that's literally just like sugar water that we give money to Elon Musk for.
I could totally picture Trump go we offered up my son Eric to be the first to take the vaccine.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, I don't think that it'll be tested on guys like Eric.
No. I'm just,
He would, though. He does not give a shit about Eric.
Yeah. It was a joke about.
That's also true.
Yeah, it was a joke about Trump's least favorite son. Thank you for understanding, Jamie.
Look, I tested it on my own son, people. That's how you know I'm really sincere.
Yeah. Wait, no, he's always looked like that. I promise you. I know for a fact he's always looked like that. It's been that weird growth on his side of his head. I swear to you, promise.
It's maybe too big of a topic for so late in the show, but you think Eric is definitely the least favorite?
Of the ones he remembers.
I don't know. Trump Jr., when Trump Jr. is like asking him questions like, hey, what did you like about this publicly in Twitter replies instead of just texting him? I wonder like if it's just a dead heat and he just hates both of his adult sons.
Right. Yeah, probably. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's one who wants to take in his father's footsteps and become a big politician, and that's Don Jr. I think Don Jr. thinks he's going to be the next president of the United States, to be honest.
Yeah. Here, let me share this.
I would be surprised if he even remembered about Tiffany.
Oh, that's what I mean. Like, of course he wouldn't do anything with Tiffany because he doesn't remember, yeah?
Look at this tweet. Donald Trump Jr., great to be back in Philadelphia. Thank you, Pennsylvania. See you again soon. He's got 2 cheesesteaks. And Trump Jr. asked him, 2 cheesesteaks, is that one Pat's or one Gino's? And no reply, obviously.
No.
So.
That's some cold shit.
Anyway,
I don't interact with the losers and the haters.
Wait, who was that again? Mute that guy. Anyway, mute the thread. Folks, Sam will be back tomorrow on a casual Friday. Jamie and Matt, thank you for joining me once again on Thursday.
I love being here. And folks, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight, youtube.com/Matt Binder. So you could understand why QAnon will slowly start transforming into an even more dangerous version of the Tea Party.
Oh, boy.
All right, folks, we will see you tomorrow, and we'll all 3 be back next week, Thursday.
Bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I guess I'm where the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid.
A resurgence right now because a bunch of big.
That bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah.